All right, we're gonna jump right into this. Let's get our plastic gauge. Should be plenty. Okay. Need 5 little pieces. Is he all jumping away from me? One right there. Come on. Okay. Here's our 5 little pieces of plastic gauge. Bearings out. Make sure these ones are standard. I bought some 1010 bearings on accident already. Thrust bearing. These ones should be the uppers. The long lines in there. These should be what we call the lowers. And the other thrust. Okay. All right, let's see. It says upper. Inspect the bearings, make sure they look good. You never know. Okay. So all those look good. Let's throw those in. Bring you over here. All right. I'd like to start with the thrust. Line the tang up. I like to put the tang on there flat and then push the other side down. Tang goes in there. Push the other side down. I wiped all that down with brake clean underneath there, so everything's nice and clean underneath. All right, let's set the crank in. Nice and easy. Gotta be careful about that thrust bearing. I want to kind of line it up where we'll have good places to do the plastic gauge. Stay away from the oil journal holes. Gotta keep those out of the way. They'll mess up the plastic gauge. All right, so there is those. Now I'm gonna set a piece of this plastic gauge on each one of these journals that we're gonna check. Lay it right across there in the middle. just getting ready to say, try not to drop it. I did. Just gonna set it right on the top, across the center, so it'll stay without falling off of there. Okay. Maybe. Out there. Okay. All look pretty good. Now let's get our top or lower bearings in the caps. Cap number 1. We're gonna do the exact same. Put the tang. Tang is what I'm talking about. Is this little square notch right here. See that? This side doesn't have one, it's perfectly straight. I get that tang in there first, hold it flush, and then push the bearing down in there. You want it to be flush with the top. Okay. Number 2, same thing. There's all the bearings installed. We got our plastic gauge on there. I'll move you over here and we'll set the caps on. All right. Here's number 1. Plastic gauge is sitting in there. I actually like to hold this up. Get the bolt started just a little bit before I lower this down on there to prevent my plastic gauge from moving when I'm screwing around trying to get these bolts started. So I like to just get them started and then lower the bearing down. And then just lightly, I'm not going to torque it with this or anything. I just want to run it down nice and easy. Saves me a little bit of time. Just snug it up. Just barely. We'll use a torque wrench. Number 2, plastic gauge is sitting there. Arrow pointing forward. Exact same thing. Get the bolt started first. Lower it down on the plastic gauge. And repeat. Okay, now we're going to go back. We're going to torque these all down to 70 foot-pounds. Just kind of in a very gently working back and forth. Just check our clearances. I'm going to skip one, just slowly snug them up just a little bit more. Not even close to torquing them down. See how loose I put them on there with the impact? I haven't even done anything yet as far as any type of torque. Alright, we're going to start right here on the thrust in the middle. Skip one. You're supposed to work your way from the inside out. I like to just skip around a little bit. This is just for squishing that plastic gauge. Okay, check them. Heater just kicked on. Starting to get cold outside. Okay, there we go. 70 foot-pounds. Now, let's take them back off. Oof. Okay. Should be able to remove all these by hand. All the threads have been cleaned by like these bottle brushes. You run them through there, cleans out all the threads real nice. A little bit of brake clean. Then take compressed air and blow through every journal, anywhere oil passages, get it all cleaned out. See, I usually use the bolt a little bit. There we go. You can see the plastic gauge in there. Oh, it's kind of shiny. See that blue line? That's what we're going to measure. I'm lifting up. It is not rubbing on the plastic gauge. Just so you know. It's not touching the plastic gauge. This thrust one's going to be kind of tricky. Pulling up, working back and forth. Just a little bit. Kind of use the bolts as some leverage. All right, that's tight. That's why that rubber hammer was sitting here. It's not tight on, well, maybe it is a little bit. We might have to adjust our end play. Take those out. Just, oh, see, barely needed anything. Okay. Shouldn't need the hammer anymore. The rest of these should come off nice and easy. Pulling up, rocking it back and forth just a little bit. This one, same thing. Okay. All right, now you can do this two ways. You can take your little plastic gauge, measure it here on the crank, or we can go over to the table and measure it on the bearings. I prefer to measure it on the bearings. It's a little easier to see. So let's take a look at that. All right. So, since these are 2.1 journals on the crank, we are looking for anywhere between 0.0004, which is way too tight, to 0.0026. So plastic gauge only has 0.002, 0.003. Those are your two. We're going to go back and forth between those. Ideally, if we can just keep it right there in the green, 0.002, that'd be ideal for me. You get them too tight, you won't get enough oil pressure. You get them too loose, you won't have any oil pressure or enough. So you see that plastic gauge mark there? Look at that. On the money. 0.002. Man, I'd say that's freaking exact. I know the light isn't helping you much to be able to see that. Look at that. See that green line lining up with the little green smear? How's that? Is that better? It's definitely wider than the white line. Man, it's like, this is perfect. This is perfect so far. Here's the thrust. Exact same, maybe 19 thousandths, maybe. It's super close to 20 thousandths. You see that there? Looks like it lines up there on the camera to me. 0.002. Okay. Let's check number 4. Same. 20 thousandths. And the last one. It's very back. That one might be just a hair over. I would say it's about 21.0021. Yep, just barely. Oh, man. Plastic gauge is not that precise. I mentioned that before. It's, I mean, the tolerance from Ford is huge. So, according to the standard there. We're good. These are all good. So mains are good. So now we just gotta take this, use a fingernail, and then we'll use some cleaner. Wipe that off there. Get that plastic gauge out of all of these bearings. We'll get them cleaned up, and we'll get our assembly lube out and put them back in and torque them back down in a center, working our way outward pattern, 70 foot-pounds. All right. Got our ultra slick here. We're gonna pull this crank back out. Put some of this ultra slick in here. Oh, brand new, see? Super stringy stuff. We'll rub that around with our finger. Get this in here. Stuff's amazing. Nice even coat. Put a little bit on the thrust here. Okay, we'll set the crank back in. Okay. Nice and easy. Watching the thrust, you want to nick that up. Okay. Good. We're ready for number one. Nice coat of ultra slick. Set that in there. Just gonna start the bolts just like last time. These started. All right, so got that started, got those in there. So now I am going to get my dial indicator out and get that set up, and we're going to tighten down number 3, the thrust bearing, and we'll check our in play. All right. Number 3. So the thrust bearing is what keeps you probably already know, but I'm gonna explain it anyway. I do have people watching this that don't know, but the thrust bearing, as you've seen putting it in, it has material on each side. It keeps the crankshaft basically centered, allows it not to walk too far forward or too far backwards. And when you're accelerating from a rapid increase, torque converter here in the back can balloon and force the crank forward. And that's where you start to wear on your thrust bearing. And we're going to check the in-play. In-play on the thrust bearing, according to spec, is 0.004 to 0.008. Okay. There's 70 foot-pounds. It definitely seems light to me, but that's what it says we're supposed to do. Alright, so let's see. Okay. This is just a mag base. Let's see. How do I want to set this up? Alright, let me get a clean pry bar. So we're gonna put this in here, apply some pressure to push it. It's all the way to the back. Let's zero. Slide you back so maybe you can see it. Now, I'm going to come back here and I'm going to push the crank forward as far as it'll go up against the thrust bearing. And we're going to see what we got. 0.0065. So, spec is 0.004 to 0.008. Let's do that one more time. Push it all the way back. 0. And let's push it back forward. .0065. As soon as I let off, you see it drops back down, but I hope you could read that. I actually had it facing the right way, so you could read that. So we are definitely in spec. Almost in the middle, right? Alright, so in play's good. We can continue on torquing down the rest of these mains. I guess I should have mentioned, every time you torque something down in here, you want to check to make sure it spins freely. So we torqued down the thrust. I gave it a push. It spins. Then I did number 4. Gave it a push. Make sure it spins. And then we just did number 2. And it spins. You want to make sure that you're not torquing everything down, then go to turn your motor over and it's super tight and you can't do it. That will be a sign of some sort of issue. And if you rotate it in between each movement, you'll be able to tell the last thing you did caused it to get too tight. Alright, everything is torqued down. It moves nice and easy. See this? That Ultra Slick is kind of stiff. You know, it's thick, like syrup. So it stays on the bearing. and you can feel it. It's a little bit of drag, but I mean, if you can move this with one finger and your finger's not turning white or purple, you're good. So next is pressing in the pistons and checking rod bearing clearances. Come on, get in there. There we go. All right. Let's get some pistons in here. All right, let's take a look. That took long enough. Pretty good. Should get another piece of paper towel out here. Lay it down, set these on. Yep, okay. All right. Sam's Club, part stores. Got these blue towels. Work great. All right, let's do these one at a time. Let's see. I grab number 5 first. Number 5. Get a little wipe down there. Let's get some spray. The cleaner the better. Okay. Same thing as the mains. There's a little tang here on the bearing. There's a little tang spot on the rod. I like to start that first, get it flush, and then push the bearing in. Just like that. Super easy. Super easy. You do the same thing on the connecting rod. Only one way. Tang's on this side. Set it in there, hold it flat, flush as you can, and run that down in there. And there you go. And then when you put these back together, if you mix them up, it's okay. Line the tang up to the tang. I call the tang, is it a tang, a tab? I don't know. But you just line those up. So if you ever get these mixed up, or you can look at the bevel. See how there's a giant bevel here, like we talked about before? Match it up with your rod cap. But the tangs all go on the same side, either way. You can't mess this up. If you're paying attention, you're perfectly fine. All right, piston ring compressor. Let's grab that. Let's check our rings. Look at that. See, they're lined up. So this one I want to put over here in line with that ring or wrist pin, and this one in line with that wrist pin. Keep them as far apart as possible for as long as we can. Like I said, they're gonna move anyway. They spin in the bore. Looks pretty good. Good and tight. It's got a little bit of WD-40 in there, just for some lubricant. Alright, so now we're going to put a little bit of our Ultra Slick on here because I'm not going to be able to get to it when we put it on the rod, or the rod on the crank. So I'm just going to, same thing, nice light coat, just like that. Alright, now I'm going to bring this over here. So I rotate the crank so this journal is at its lowest position. So it'll give me time to get the piston rings inside the bore before I have to reach under there and make sure we guide the bolts, rod bolts, over the crank. Number 5 was right here. So let's drop this in. Line it up. Slightly tap this piston. Rubber tipped handle. Should have started with that down a little farther, but that's okay. Alright, so I got the piston almost all the way down in there. I don't know how much you can see. You're so far away. You see it in there? Now I'm going to give this a little crank to make sure. Ah, I put it on the bottom. I can't. Alright, don't let me do that next time. We're gonna see what happens here. Okay, it's almost in. We make sure the rod is going to clear. There's that. Keep that off the floor. I'll tap it down till we're on the crank. I'm holding the rod bolts so they don't nick up the crankshaft. Almost. There we go. Okay. So now I'm going to put that one together. Let's flip her over. We're going to change it a little bit this time. We are going to bring you closer for one. And I want to keep this at a 90 like this for the next one. So I'm hitting straight down. I don't know, can you see? We're good there. Alright, here's our cap. We have 2 nuts. And these are supposed to be 22 to 25 foot-pounds to tighten these down. So once again, these are 1/2 inch. Getting a little crowded here. Crank this thing way down to 25. Foot-pounds. Not very much. Alright, ultra slick. Same thing. Dab will do ya. Remember? What did I tell you? Tang goes to where? Where does the chamfer go? Chamfer goes towards the crank. And the tangs line up with each other. Do not drop any of this. If you drop these, you got to start all over, clean everything up. You do not want to get any dirt in these bearing surfaces. Keep all of this clean. That's kind of why we're doing so much to this currently. It's because I got to get this together. I gotta get it buttoned up, sealed, so we can move on to some other projects. I have a bunch of stuff that needs to be done. The weather is currently changing. We're running out of time. So we need to get this engine all sealed up. Going back and forth, just snugging them up. Boy. And that's it. That is so light. Doesn't seem like much. But that's all it calls for. Alright, so once again, we want to rotate it. Now you're going to have more drag because now your rings are rubbing up against your cross hatches. But it should be fairly easy. The more pistons you put in here, the more, can you hear that? The more drag you're going to have. And we'll eventually have to put a wrench on here or a socket to turn that over. Alright. Now I want to do number 1. I want to keep all these together. So number 1 is on this side. So I want to turn this over. It's just how I like doing it. Having the journal on the bottom, farthest away. That way I have the most time to get that set. Okay. Doubt you want to watch it again, so we're going to go into time lapse and I'll knock a couple more of these back in and then I'll bring you along, take a look and show you. I almost forgot to show plasti gauge in the rods. We've already did it, done it, have done it. I'm going to do it again to show you. I have plasti gauge right here on this rod. So we'll line our cap back up. We'll put this on. Get it down on there nice and easy. We'll crank these down to 25 foot-pounds. And we'll pull it back off and I'll show you what the plasti gauge is reading on this rod. Back and forth, nice and easy. Just even between the two. There's 25. There's 25. Let's double check. 25. Okay, 25. Since that's only 25, we'll just use it, the torque wrench, take it back off, just break it free. I don't like doing that. Usually use a regular ratchet, not my torque wrench for everything. You don't want to be doing that. Got to be able to trust that torque wrench. Okay. Sometimes these can be tricky to come off. Oh man, I just wiggled the whole dang thing. I hope I didn't smear it. Okay. Perfect. Okay, so 0.0008 to 0.0026. It's basically the exact same as the mains, right? So we're going to use our same piece that we use for setting up the mains. Hold it on there, and are you in the frame? Can you see it? Probably not. Let's see if I can tip you in. Right there, it's exactly the same. Green line, 0.002. So rods equaled the exact same as the mains. All of them. They're all the same. I just didn't show you that. So me putting these pistons in for the last time, putting assembly lube on, figured I better show you because it's part of it. We don't want anybody skipping it. That cleans right off. That's very nice. Okay, so now all we're going to do is tap this one out, since I didn't put assembly lube on it because I wanted you to see the bearings there. It's nice and easy. Sounds worse than it is. Okay, should be enough. Put some of this maple syrup in here, this red maple syrup. Oh yeah. Okay. Put the rest of this on the bearing cap, rod cap. I've read a lot of different things about setting up these mains and rod bearings, on what people like, what they want, the tolerance through the actual literature, not what everyone just randomly wants to set theirs up at. I mean, if it works for you, keep doing it, but ideally, the journals are 2-inch journals. I think it's like 2 and some change. So if you set them up at 0.002, you're fine. You're fine. That's the way this was set up. Well, not this exact motor, but the other motor 25 years ago, and it worked just fine. So once again, if it works for you, keep doing it. Alright, there we go. Plenty of assembly lube. Showed you plastic gauge. And we'll go back, put you back over. We'll do the time lapse. Get the rest of these in. Rotate it in between each one being put in. 25. All right, well, at this point, being I have 3 in there, let me grab my 15/16 and we're gonna stick on a regular ratchet and we'll roll this over now we're getting so much friction from the rings on the cross hatching. Oh yeah, still rolls over pretty good. That's probably, I don't know, what would I say? Kind of using 2 fingers. Probably could have lubed up the cylinders a little bit, but let's get this set for the next rod and piston. Number 2. All right, should I leave you there, or you want to come over to the other side? What works better? I don't think I'm gonna like that, so I'm not gonna be able to get in here to pound it in. I'm moving you. Rods all done plasti gauging, sitting in here ready to go in. Well, I've been talking to myself out here for the last 15 minutes. I tried to bring you along so you could watch me put in the last one, number 8, and I must not have been recording. But there they are. You can hear them going through the cross hatching, the rings. Pretty nice. There. We go like that. Can you see any of that? How does that look? Pretty nice. I think that looks really good. So, let me wipe that out a little bit. So basically, bottom end is all done. Throw our oil pump in there, pick up, and rod. Here, let's bring you off here. Take a look. So, there it is. Those are gonna look pretty good. Let's make you dizzy. How about that? Well, let's bring number 1 all the way up. Let's see what number 1 looks like at the top of the cylinder. Oh, all the way around. Really need to put the pin in. Hold on. I'm back. Got the pin in there. This motor can't go over. Let's bring number 1 up. It's coming up. Coming up. Right there's the dwell. Let's stop it right there. Oh yeah. It's not really down in the hole. Man, it's not in the hole at all. We're gonna have a really good quench. Yeah. Yeah, we could check that real quick. That'd help determine our compression numbers. Let's see. I got my dial indicator out. We'll see how far it is in the hole, and we'll write that on the whiteboard. Zeroed. It's riding on the deck. Yeah. 05. Right there, 0 still. And now we're on the piston. Okay, so that is 0.015. It's 1/1000th in the hole. 15. I don't even know if you can see that. Am I talking to myself? You can't see it. Shoot. Here. And that is how far we're in the hole. Not zero deck. Close enough. All right. That is it for tonight. That is as far as we're going. Get it all wrapped back up again. That's probably really noisy and annoying, right? But you gotta keep it clean. Gotta keep the dirt off of it. What are we gonna do? What's next? What's next? I got the thread sealant to do the head studs. We could do that. We can put the head studs on and drop the AFR heads on and check piston to valve clearance. Ooh, that's scary. That's scary. We'll do that. Camshaft's over there. Slide the camshaft in, put the head studs in, and roll her over with some silly putty in there or something, and measure what kinds of piston to valve clearance we got. So, that's it. Thanks for watching. Stick around to see the rest of this engine build, and before long it'll be in here fired up. We'll hear what it sounds like. Thanks.